So it's always nice to wake up to a little back compat story. And I saw Insider Gaming tweet this out about PlayStation 6 will have a AMD chip with backwards compatibility. It is claimed. And the article goes on to say the next generation PS6 is already well in development and major decisions on the console have already been made. According to a new report from Reuters, the new PS6 will once again feature an AMD chip in the system. The report says Sony and Intel were in talks, but Intel lost the contract to AMD back in 2022. The report claims that one of the disputes between Intel and Sony involved how much profit Intel would make from each processor. On top of the price dispute, backwards compatibility is said to be a major sticking point with Sony. Moving from AMD, which made the PlayStation 5 chip, to Intel would have risked backwards compatibility, which was a subject of discussion between Intel and Sony engineers and executives, the report states. Ensuring backwards compatibility with prior versions of the PlayStation would have been costly and taken engineering resources. Whether that means backwards compatibility with just PS5 and PS4 games, or if that means further back in the PlayStation catalog, is currently unknown. So just from looking over that, just from that quick little glimpse there, I think it'd be safe to say that this is probably just about making sure that the games that are already available from PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 will be carried over to PlayStation 6. I don't think there's anything to get overly excited about with this article. I think at this point it's kind of a no-brainer that these console manufacturers, I mean, they don't have to do anything, but it would be in their best interest from a PR standpoint at the very least to make sure that the games you purchased on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 will be accessible and playable on PlayStation 6. But I definitely do think that's an area where PlayStation definitely needs to improve with their backwards compatibility offering. I mean, that's probably my favorite thing about the Series X is just going back and playing through old 360 games and original Xbox games and having the performance enhanced versions of a lot of those 360 games. I mean, I've played through so many 7th generation games for the first time on the Series X. And I know some people make the argument, well, why are you buying a new console to play old games? And I get that to some extent, but I think if you look at that report, that came out, I think last year, where it was something like 60% of playtime spent across all consoles is on games that are 6 years old or older. So, like, people do value playing older games. And, of course, a lot of that data is coming from Grand Theft Auto Online and Fortnite and things that are these ongoing games that kind of perpetually exist. But, when you saw, like, the Fallout spike in New Vegas and Fallout 4 and Fallout 3 whenever the Fallout TV show came out, or Mad Max when Furiosa came out and people were going back to the 2016 release, the Avalanche, I believe, the guys who made Just Cause also created that Mad Max game. So people were going back in droves to play those older titles whenever there was something that reminded them, oh hey, these older titles exist and they're pretty fucking sick. So anyways, all of that leads me to the question I have for you all. How much would you pay personally for a fully backwards compatible PlayStation 6? If you could go and put your PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, PS5 games into a disc drive on your PlayStation 6 and still have full access to all the PS6 games, the next gen technology, all that shit, but you also had full backwards compatibility, how much would you be willing to pay for that system? And it's really funny, as I was just pitching a fit the other day about the PS5 Pro being $700. It shows how much of a hypocrite we can be whenever things are, things we care about are introduced. So for the PS5 Pro, $700, like, for that, in my opinion, seemingly minimal upgrade, I'm like, I don't want to pay $700 for that. But once again, I understand if anybody out there wants to go buy a PS5 Pro and they're like, shit's worth it to me. That's the important thing here, is that little minute details could be very important to different people. So for me personally, a fully backwards compatible PlayStation 6, that's like a dream console. Backwards compatibility, as you see behind me and all around me, backwards compatibility, physical media, that shit is so damn important to me. Now we'll get to it in a second. I don't think that future versions of backwards compatible consoles are really going to be reliant on physical media. I think most of that shit will be preserved through digital means, which I think is great too. But just keeping the conversation here for a second, for a fully backwards compatible PlayStation 6, if I could insert my disc into the system, get it to run, I think I'd be willing to drop $1,000, if not a little bit more. And if we're talking digital emulation, that would be a slightly different conversation. Although that would be something I would value a lot, and I'd still be willing to pay a good bit of money for a fully backwards compatible PS6 through digital emulation. I think you're talking about that's difficult to really full backwards compatibility through digital emulation. Like, I don't know if that would be something that they could really even achieve. But once again, I'm not a tech guy. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I do know that PlayStation is working with that implicit conversions emulation program, emulation company, to get PlayStation 2 games up to speed, get PlayStation 2 games running on PlayStation 5. Like, you just saw Sly Cooper and was it the Clone Wars, Star Wars game, and you're seeing PS2 games begin to roll out, and their website indicates that they're working to bring PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PSP games to modern PlayStation platforms, but not PlayStation 3, which that's kind of the big bummer, where to access those games on your PS5, you're going to have to stream them, which people have differing results. I never have good results with that, but I also have horrible internet. But I do remember a port from a while back where Jeff Grubb was talking about, from Giant Bomb, was talking about that he has heard rumblings that PlayStation is working with a company to, get PS3 games emulated and running natively as well, to where you can actually download them and play the actual game natively without having to rely on streaming. So hopefully that's something we can look out for in the future. And I do like the digital aspect of this, where, like, when it comes to pricing, a lot of these games are priced at like, $10. And if you went to buy a lot of these games physically, they're a little bit up there. The physical resale market can be a bit scummy. So anything to get people access to these classic games for a lesser price tag, I'm all in favor of that. Like, I'm really not all full 100% physical over digital. Like, there are definite benefits to digital media consumption. I just really like to own something tangible when I buy a product. But if I can buy, I can't think of it. If Silent Hill Shattered Memories comes to the PlayStation 2 through, the digital storefront, or, through PlayStation Plus, and I can get it for $10 or whatever, opposed to paying $100+ on eBay, absolutely. All day, every day, twice on Sunday, I'm taking the digital route. But I do think when you look at the PlayStation 3 and how expensive it still is, like the fully backwards compatible fat PS3, and you look at how expensive it still is, I mean, those things are reselling for over $300 frequently. So I do think there is a market of enthusiasts, like a more niche market of enthusiasts, who would be willing to pay a pretty penny for a fully 100% backwards compatible PlayStation 6 where you can insert your disc and play your entire library. Like, if that was announced, I would be doing damn jumping jacks. I would be through the roof. And I'm not necessarily saying it would be a comparable niche market to the PS5 Pro, where I think that'll probably take up about 10-15% of the user base between, the base PlayStation 5 and the PS5 Pro. I think the PS5, let's say the PS5 goes on to sell 100 million consoles, 100 million units. I could see the PS5 Pro selling 15 mil. Maybe that wouldn't be the same story for a fully backwards compatible PlayStation 6. But maybe it would be. Like, I kind of wonder if that market would be substantial enough to really make some noise. But regardless of all that, my question to you guys is, for one, would you be interested in a fully backwards compatible PlayStation 6? Two, how much would you be willing to pay for it? And three, would the idea of some crazy scenario where you could insert all of your physical media into a PlayStation 6 from all of your previous PlayStation generations and be able to access those games and play them natively, like, would that be something that is valuable to you all? I also saw that VGC reported on this backwards compatibility situation as well, and this isn't directly related to that, but it says at the bottom of the article here, according to documents published as part of the court's battle over Microsoft's Activision Blizzard acquisition, Sony doesn't expect to launch its next-gen console until 2028 at the earliest. Which I think is, that's to be expected. 2028 for the end of the console generation, an 8-year life cycle for this thing. The PS4 was 2013 to 2020, so 7 years there. Yeah, I think that it should even go on longer, if I'm being totally honest. Unless we're talking about significant upgrades and significant technological enhancements, and because I feel like jumping from the PS4 to the PS5, loading times were definitely, that was like the big holy shit factor to me, where it's like, oh damn, I'm jumping into these games almost instantaneously, ready to go. Like when I booted up Miles Morales for the first time on the PS5, I was like, yo, this thing is running, man. But outside of that, I would say the upgrades across the board have just been fairly minimal. I think that's why we're seeing this generation really take quite a while to kick off in a big way, where you're seeing Horizon and God of War Ragnarok and a lot of these titles that are premier current gen titles, but they're also available on last gen technology. And sure, they definitely run better on the PS5 and all of that, but it's not that drastic evolution in technology that we would see from like PS2 to PS3 or SNES to N64. And I feel like until we can get to a point like that, to me it's like, let this damn console generation run on for as long as humanly possible. I would much rather not have to spend out another, I guess I was gonna say $500, but it's looking more like $700, $800, $900 for the next generation of a PlayStation console. Unless, of course, it was fully backwards compatible. And then that makes me a total hypocrite, and I'd be willing to open up my wallet to fucking damn near any price point Sony wanted me to pay.